Legislation is now in place in Montana aimed at giving victims of violence a little more peace of mind. House Bill 449 revises laws about electronic monitoring as a condition of pretrial release. The 2021 Montana legislature approved the bill that requires judges to order electronic monitoring as a condition of release for certain crimes like felony partner family member assault, strangulation, felony stalking, or felony violation of a protection order. The exception, if a defendant can prove electronic monitoring isn't necessary for the victim or community safety, or it's not needed to ensure that defendant will comply with release conditions. Before this bill, electronic monitoring was an option, not a requirement. The bill also expands victim notification of a defendant's GPS violations. I spoke with members of law enforcement, the judicial system, and a woman who's been directly impacted by violence to learn why this bill matters. Under the big sky, there's a problem affecting thousands of Montanans every year.
Not a lot of people want to talk about domestic violence or sexual assault or stalking. However, the problem is continuing to rise.
According to the Montana Department of Justice, law enforcement responded to more than 4,000 cases of domestic violence in 2019. That averages out to an act of domestic violence like assault, strangulation, or stalking every 2.5 hours. It's a problem that's only gotten worse during the pandemic.
We've seen a dramatic increase in domestic violence related charges, among other things.
House Bill 449, which went into effect July 1st, aims to help protect domestic violence victims.
Legislation is a recognition of the impact that these crimes have on victims.
Nervous and afraid and worried.
This bill hits close to home for Amanda Scott.
My daughter was assaulted.
She's a big proponent of GPS monitoring.
As a mom, you at that moment want to be there every step of every day for them to make sure they're safe and protected. And unfortunately, I couldn't do that. She had to go to school. I had to go to work. She had things that she had to do, and I had to know that she was safe. GPS provided me with that feeling of security so that even if I couldn't be with her during that point in her day, that I knew that there was still something in place that would protect her when I couldn't be there.
House Bill 449 also expands victim notification to get real-time information about an offender's violation of bail conditions and more.
For instance, you program in the victim's address or their workplace or their school. And if you had, for instance, a 1,500-foot radius drawn around there, if the offender came within that particular zone, then, of course, the victim could be notified, as well as if they come within the proximity of that victim's phone itself.
Pinsky, along with Cascade County Sheriff Jesse Slaughter, see benefits of the bill inside detention facilities.
The other thing it could potentially do in the future moving forward is it could reduce jail population and jail overcrowding for those pretrial offenders.
The burden of paying for GPS monitoring falls on the defendant.
They all have a constitutional right to bail. Everybody who is charged with a crime is innocent until proven guilty. There's two sides to every story. However, we do have to ensure that we maintain public safety during that transition, and I think this is a good step.
The biggest takeaway from House Bill 449, added protective measures for victims.
I'm super excited to hear about the legislation and the potential that it has for those folks that sometimes feel like there's no one in their corner and that nobody can protect them.
So a company called Scram Systems is one of the main producers of electronic monitoring and software that's used by law enforcement in the criminal justice system. The technology allows for alcohol monitoring as well as GPS tracking and victim notification. So I asked a Scram spokesperson how many people in Montana right now are using their devices. They have around 1,166 clients. 268 are using GPS monitoring. The other 880 are on alcohol monitoring, remote breath, or house arrest. You can read the full text of House Bill 449, learn more about Scram in the story on our website later this morning. There you'll also find more information about domestic violence and stalking, and you can hear much more from Amanda Scott and her story.